the issue that we're discussing with it, I would have been okay with that. But you provide me with the one that is the lesser impacted, and that makes no sense.
But tell me what the real concern on that profile is.
The concern
What's your
is,
concern on it?
the concern is how close the house is to a steep slope, and how much it goes into a steep slope, how much has to be cut away, and how much has to be
But all that information's on the site plan, the elevations, the cuts, the walls, it's all on the site plan.
I don't-
You're asking me for a profile view, but all the information is on the existing site plan, as far as the cuts, the grading, the walls, it's all there. I'm sure Dan could tell you that.
if you're saying you're not going to provide it, then you're not going to provide it.
Look, I don't want to comply all the time, this is just frustrating, it really is.
I think you
Yeah,
made
I'm
an error
losing-
in judgment.
Well, sir, the resolution to this debate may be to include it in the resolution as a condition, which it's in there already.
Right, but it's
You want it
but
first.
it's not valuable to the discussion among the board after the fact. And even if the board would have the right to say it's in the resolution, and we could it could be contingent, it's still after the fact of the main discussion. This is when we're having the discussion, we should have all the information in front of us. And it's been like pulling teeth, getting basic information out of you, in all honesty, and I don't think that's fair to the board.
And I've done, what was asked of me, but
No, you haven't.
you didn't dictate you wanted both lots done.
Yeah, he did.
You did? I didn't understand that.
At least once, if not more than once.
Yeah.
Why, is the other members of the board prepared to adjourn this as well?
I have concerns also I'd like to address.
Why don't you express it?
Thank you, Chair. When I look at the little drawing that's called D18-8, the proposed retaining wall, little section right here, I see a rectangular box. As an architect, where I do projects all over the country, and we design retaining walls all the time, I said, a little rectangular box like that, holding up, whether it's 6 feet, 8 feet, and each lot is slightly different as to how much it is. I went to an old-fashioned resource that I have, which is an architectural graphic standards. And inside there's a section on retaining walls, 3 pages, showing how to design. I know, we're the planning board. I'm just giving this to you, architectural graphic standards, to give to your architect and your engineer to design a retaining wall that is more than just a little rectangle. Just give this to your architect, give it to the engineer, so that when your plans do get in front of the building inspector, ready for approval, that it is designed, I don't want to use the term weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. I don't want on my conscience a retaining wall that's going to fall down on the property next door. I want it designed properly. This is for you.
Sure.
That's my only comments.
Okay, sure.
Mark, if I may, just a point of clarification, because of the height of the wall, he's going to have to submit a building permit for it. So
That's why
What's
graphic
there-
standard shows what needs to be done.
it may be a module, it could be a variety of things. I think
Again, I can't vote on a rectangular box.
Well, I
That's
guess the
presented in front
the
of us.
question is whether, we often get, especially with the modular block plans, because the building permit is needed later on, that shop drawings are provided to the building department with the real nuts and bolts of the actual blocks being used, the type of geogrid, and, if it's going to be a modular block. If it's going to be poured concrete, likewise, signed and sealed drawings of that wall will be required.
That's what I want him to, he does, as long as I know that his architect, his engineer his structural people are designing something that meets code, that follows architectural graphic standards. I'm not talking as a planning board member, I'm talking about as a member of the architectural review board. When I see a little rectangular box, I'm concerned. I'm concerned for the neighbors next door. Simple
Well,
as that.
and to that end, I mean,
What he wants to build, I don't have a problem with.
All right.
I just want to make sure those retaining walls, as Gareth mentioned earlier, are really secure, really, really secure. Not for 100-year, not for 500-year, just secured. Just look at the news
I
of
think,
what's
I think
happened
basically
lately.
the board needs to have enough information so they're comfortable with going forward with this, rather than something so bare bones as to suggest that it's not in any way complete as an application. Jim, do you have any comments on this one?
I mean, it's kind of a building department issue on the construction of the wall. I mean, if we specify that the wall needs to be properly engineered, I mean, it's just between him and the structural engineer coming up with a retaining wall that satisfies, you know, what it's, you know, the earth that it's holding. I mean, it's kind of beyond the site plan issue. I mean, if you want to talk about the aesthetics and how they finish the wall, that's fine, but
Well,
I
Yeah,
think it's
really,
between his architect or engineer and the building permit
that really
application.
goes to the question of how much detail is put into the drawings, but is there even enough information presently provided that would satisfy that statement? That this is going to be
Well,
satisfactory?
we've had some conversation about how to finish the wall and not necessarily discussing construction.
Okay.
I mean, the dilemma that he's faced with because of these lots, with the modular block systems, especially with these walls that are as high as being proposed here, a geogrid is installed that comes back behind the wall. So because of where the property lines are and where the wall is right up against the property line, you can't do it. You could do it in the backyard, but it won't work on the side, so it may have to be poured concrete. You know, and if this, I guess this will come back to you in the capacity of the ARB. So in terms of the finish of the wall,
This is the idea.
oh, right, this is, I'm thinking we're
This is
doing-
why on the sidewalls,
Right.
that's where I have a major concern.
I mean, because the other issue that needs to be looked at, because it appears that there's a discrepancy between the topo on lot 3 behind the retaining wall and the grade below it. If I'm seeing that right, it looks like there's a 219. I can't see if that, it's better on here. It's not on that side. It looks like a 219, and so really, the spot elevation is at
213 to
213 at the
219.
bottom, but you have the 230 contour. So that back corner of the wall is like 18 feet high. I have a little trouble reading it, but I think that's what
You're not making Garrett's point.
Dan, is this plan better for you or not?
Is that the old one?
This is the,
That's dated 2012.
Okay, this one's doing a double wall.
Can I show you the concern? It's hard to read.
I gotta tell you, Jim, I mean, I've been through architecture.
I understand.
This is,
I
this is
understand.
going into engineering details, I'm saying.
I understand.
This is great, I'm bringing my own.
The base of the walls are 213, the top of the walls are 219. The grades are 230. I mean, if we follow those lines straight across, so we're going from 213 to 219, but the grade is at 230. I mean, it's gonna be adjusted just like he did here, but you know, it's just a much bigger adjustment. I mean, you can see at 218, there's like a foot. here, 219, with 11 feet.
Is that superseded?
Yeah.
It's not a 4-foot wall height.
I mean, you don't want it to be like a 12-foot wall either.
No.
But that's the concern.
So we've got, I know he's got like a 0 to 10 on one of the drawings. Definitely more 12 foot.
So replacing this one.
Because we want the wall to be where you want the wall to be, which is going to be the most possible. But with that kind of discrepancy, it's hard to
Like I said, I'm ready to I tell them some of the things that this was done use of spear balls.
It is contradictory. It is contradictory.
Who's on here?
I don't know if they answered much.
Sometimes trying to
Frankly, I
save
was
work.
telling Mark that the design of that wall doesn't really fall into our wheelhouse.
But in the end, you're gonna have to address it anyway with us, so you might as well start sort of preparing for it. It's kind of, I mean, we can quibble over what the actual procedure would be, but at the end of the day, these issues are coming up that have to be addressed.
Like, I'm with you on this. This should be designed on a building permit application and worked out with John. You know, it should be designed and engineered to make sure it retains that earth. But that discrepancy on what you're doing with the elevation there,
He has to answer those
like,
questions.
you know, how are you doing that?
All right, David, you had drafted a resolution for this at this point. Is there any need to go through it? Okay. So could I have a minute? Do we need
There is a
to-
list of things in there that the applicant needs to provide.
Okay,
So maybe we should just look at that.
well, sure, all right. Or has the applicant already had a copy of it?
Applicant has a copy of this.
Okay,
So John, there's a list of things here that need to be provided
I've seen that.
on pages 2 and 3, so.
Okay.
Okay, so on the record, you've been put on notice of the fact that those items are missing as well. Okay? Do we need to make a motion to have a date certain for this? Continue?
Yeah,
What's the next date that would be convenient for folks?
Can you repeat that?
What's the next date that would be convenient for folks? on
Our next meeting is October 3rd.
well, I think it's probably more important to find out when these things can be available.
this? Do we have any?
I'm gonna call him in the morning. He's gonna get right on it and get it done immediately.
All right. So we'll say tentatively to October 3rd?
That's what it's gonna
Submit,
be.
we need the submission in advance of October 3rd.
How many days ahead of that do they need that? Because you usually have one.
There's a 10 days ahead of that.
Right.
And the sooner you can get it in, the better, because the consultants need time to review and make sure it's, we'd all like to be at a point that we can be in a position to adopt the resolution.
You're gonna deal with him from now on, not me.
Just so we give this gentleman some clarity, how, is the board interested in what the wall will be constructed of and what the face of it will have on it?
We've discussed the wall being finished with stone, but
Not
frankly,
with stone.
the construction of it should just be engineered between you, your architect, and the building permit application.
But, well, we're talking about the front wall and the walls into the driveway or the retaining walls?
The retaining walls.
The retaining
Well,
walls.
At the last meeting, you agreed to do the retaining
Well,
walls
if that's not the
as
case, you
well.
tell us.
Well, I've agreed to do the front walls and the walls into the driveway. I don't know how extensive those walls are gonna be and where I can get stone if they're gonna be really extensive walls.
You're on record as agreeing to do the retaining walls in natural stone as well. If you're changing your mind, then you should let the board know that.
It depends, I mean, there could be some extensive walls there. I have such a tight site, I
Even
couldn't
you
even get
don't
that
know-
rock in there.
So even you don't know how extensive those walls
No, I'm not gonna
are
know
be.
until I start construction on it.
That's
not
why
gonna
I was
know.
asking for boring 2 months ago.
That's engineering, that's not architectural review. I'm bringing my engineer next time, and he'll address these things, because when I tell him some of the things that's being asked here, he's gonna address you, he's gonna look at you from an engineering standpoint and a
That
legal
would be
aspect.
terrific.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do.
Yes.
This is
We
just,
would value that.
this is crazy, and that site is so tight, I can't even get stone up there. It's a very small site, and moving around is difficult. To get that amount of stone up on that back area would be a feat of
So
impossibility.
what do you plan on finishing the wall with?
I don't know whether it's gonna be ready rock or whether it's gonna be concrete.
So
It's
you've
probably
changed
look-
your mind, is that what you're saying?
I'm saying, I'm not sure where it is, but I don't think that I can get natural stone back there if I'm gonna do 10-foot walls.
If you
If
can
I-
build a wall, you can get natural stone back there.
I can pour concrete, I just, at this point, I don't know. Like I said, I'm gonna bring my engineer next time, let him speak on my behalf. I'm not doing this anymore.
All right, so, next item on the agenda is the Village of Ossining Water Treatment Plant, 25 Reservoir Road.
Chair, do you want to have anyone from the public to speak before we go on to the next item?
I'm sorry, is there any members of the public wanted to speak on this, on the previous application? Hearing none, okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Village of Ossining Water Treatment Plant, continue the site plan.
Sandy's, the renderings. Oh, yes.
Now, I understand that there's a grant deadline at issue here.
Yeah, I will include that in my presentation this evening. Thank you. Thanks.
Oh, we could just X that out.
Yeah, I'll let them do that. I just wanted to introduce that. That'll be a little bit of my participation this evening.
Sorry.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Chairman of the Board, for having us back again this evening. Our presentation tonight originally was going to be to discuss the last pieces of your earlier requests, more specifically some detailed architectural renderings and elevations, which we'll get into second with Mr. David Braun from Hazen and Sawyer, who's with us again this evening. Also with us this evening are Michael Broder, the project manager from Hazen and Sawyer, and Ruby Wells, who is going to discuss a little bit of the aforementioned grant by the chairman. I do want to introduce the grant component, but we'll talk about that after you guys have had a chance to review the site plan and the renderings. The issue with the grant is that the deadline for submittal to the EFC for an intermunicipal grant, which we were allowed to make application due to the intermunicipal nature of our water system, in that the village provides the town water, and this building is also located in the town. That made us a candidate. Ruby Wells is going to talk a little bit more about the details of that. And also, I wanted to thank you in advance for some of the administrative expediency that we're going to need for the grant application, because it's due on Friday. So although we don't want to rush the formal planning board process, there are some things tied into the negative declaration which need to be documented for the grant. Your planning consultant just received an email this evening. I'm not even sure you had a chance to open it yet, but it's really in relation to what you have prepared for the negative deck, because we received some comments back from the DEC that we really might want to amend there. Again, which Ruby's going to get into. They're, dare I say, they're minor, and things that we should have no problem working around with regard to our project. But Ruby will get into that. Before we do that, I'd like to introduce David Braun so he can go over the site plan and rendering, and hopefully have reached a point that satisfies the planning board. Thank you.
Evening, everyone, board members. Wanted to start right out, dig right into, this is a landscape plan. This is one of the items that we requested. And this shows the overall site. This is the entrance road here, Reservoir Road, right up to the site entrance. And what we're trying to just illustrate here is the repopulation of the trees, the restitution of the trees to the greatest extent. We felt practical right on the site. This does not get into the full tree restitution. That coordination will remain with the town and the village to incorporate more trees throughout the community. But this is a representation of what we felt was appropriate for tree restitution local to the site. So we've got the new plant here. In addition to the tree restitution, it does show the extent of the green roof that will be on the new facility. And just for point of reference, the existing facility is here in the corner.
You'd like to ask questions?
Absolutely.
Thank you for this plan. I looked at it, there was just one concern that I have on this is you're spending a lot of money building this facility, which we know is necessary. You're putting this green roof on, which I think is spectacular. But then I look and I see one element that makes me question, like, and it's a simple fix. You're proposing planting grass seed on the property when, if anyone who lives in Ossining, village or town, knows that if you let a slope with dirt on it, whatever it is, just leave it alone, it will turn to moss. So you're proposing placing grass on this, which is going to require mowing by the village. Might need some fertilizer, but it's a water treatment plant. You wouldn't want to use fertilizer, but you have grass. You probably can find something that's not. But if you just left it alone, you wouldn't have to take a mower with oil, gas, mowing a lawn. Just let it be natural, let it turn to moss. I have spent the past 20 years on my property killing all my grass. I have zero grass on my property. It is all moss, it is lush, green, it is beautiful. The town of Ossining, the water treatment plant, should strive to do the exact same thing. I don't think a single neighbor would object to having moss as grass instead of grass, which has to be mowed. It would be beneficial, maintenance-free. That's my own concern at the moment.
Absolutely, we can take that under advisement. There are areas that we have provided low-lying shrubs and things, but there are areas that do need to be grassed in a sense. Moss sounds like it would work for those purposes. That would be here. We have bioretention, and what you can't see is in this area as well, where the cursor is, there's bioretention underneath there. So there's actual tankage underneath. That's all for the stormwater management. So those areas were intended to be grass, so they can be maintained, kept clean and accessible for the village to maintain those areas. So, but moss is something we can take under advisement.
I'm just concerned about water treatment, pumping stations, taking water and using it, and some contamination from whatever is used on a grass to maintain and keep it green. We don't need it. We don't need grass. We really don't need grass. I have other concerns later, but I'll wait till that subject matter comes up.
So we can definitely take under advisement the recommendation to replace grasses with moss. Bring that back to our landscape architects and get that incorporated.
Or a ground cover of your choice.
Right.
Yeah, usually it's deer resistant, wildflowers, things of that nature, but anything that would be relatively easy to maintain. As a point of reference, we've got some details, just typical plantings. What you're talking about, I think, is here. A little hard for me to see, but the idea of slopes and how they're maintained with grasses. But I think, if you will, you'd probably be a little bit more interested in jumping right into the rendering. What we've got here, we've taken under advisement the recommendations from the board and input from the community, and we've gone with more earth tones, browns, tans. They've got a little reddish element in them as well. One thing I will point out with this rendering, you'll see as we progress through some of the elevations, if I can find how to go to the next slide. These colors tend to pop a little bit. They seem a little bit bright. This has to do a little bit more with the rendering process. It has to do with time of year, sun position, and things like that. So this is something in the model for the rendering that we're trying to work out. But in general, they should be a bit darker. And you'll see that we have
What is the material?
samples as well. It's a terracotta rain screen
It's
for
actual
the facade.
terracotta?
Yes.
Okay.
So, pass it to Board Member Mark. The bunch of samples, there are varying colors. We've gone with the second row, which is the reddish earthy tones. So what you've got here, this is the back end of the facility. So this would be the north side, and this would be the facade facing the neighbors.
Can we make us, it looks a little orangey.
Okay.
Personally, I like the top row a little bit better. I like the earth tone colors. But I'd rather have the other members of our board look at it too. I don't object to what you're doing there. I think it's a little orangey. And
Okay.
I'm also looking at the neighbors over there, and I don't see any orange in any of those houses. But I know it has to be a color. Just a little
Yeah,
bit.
we went with
Little
the
bit more
browns
the
and the earthy
browns.
tones. The intent would be to try to have the building blend with the barren trees during the late autumn and through the winter months. Trying to go with basically the browns to mask with the fallen trees, fallen leaves on the trees. The samples are provided for your comment, so if you ultimately recommend darker tones, those are relatively easy changes to incorporate.
You comment? I like the darker ones.
I like the darker ones.
I think so.
Three of the,
Especially if they, I don't know how much they fade over time, but certainly.
We have
that
another
would be
set of
an
this.
issue as well.
We can take notes. I'll take a photo. Just for
The
reference.
concept is
But we have,
definitely better.
Yeah,
we
it
have
looks a
another
lot
copy.
better than the line going across.
Understood. So this is the east facade. This would be facing the existing facility basically, but this is the facade facing the neighbors. If you'll notice that it was chosen to pick more and more of the darker colors in this rendering. And then as you progress to the other sides, as you see the front, you'll see again, now it's a little bit more of, to quote the orange, pops out a little bit more. And then this is the facade that you'd be seeing walking along the Old Croton Aqueduct or from the entrance road. Presumably there would be enough trees, hopefully we can, if they grow up, they'll mask those as well.
And the grade though is higher than concrete, the grade line. That's really the full structure.
Oh yeah, correct.
So, you know,
Just
that's
about
not the
here,
whole
this is,
facade you see. The grade actually against the building is that higher line. So this is a rendering of the full structure without the soil against it. So
so it's the board's recommendation to go with the darker tones?
And I have another thought on that, but I'm not an architect, I'm not an aesthetic guy, but in Innsbruck, Austria, I saw a really cool looking building where the facade essentially replicated the angular random fissures of a rock face, but in their unit block construction. And so I'm wondering how this would look rather than the randomly placed different colors. If they could be sort of like random, fissures and that kind of more look like a rock face.
This particular facade system, I do not believe that they're available in that more randomized aggregate rock pattern. I believe they're provided as a block. something that we could look into, but
Blocks, how big? Or are they like large sections?
my understanding is they're about, from the samples that we've received, they're about 5 inches by about a foot.
But each
No.
block is one color, right?
Correct.
So you could place them in a whatever
Jigsaw is.
position,
Yes,
jigsaw you
yeah.
want, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just suggesting rather than a purely randomized placement of the different colors, you could play with some ideas for,
Are you suggesting something like the old World War I convoys with a dazzle kind of thing?
that's one way to look at it. That wasn't my concept.
Okay.
The dazzle come, no, then you'd have
Might
it
look a
red
little
and
bit-
orange
It
and
might
yellow.
look, yeah,
Right.
a little bit stark for the neighbors.
No, that's not what I'm thinking.
You're suggesting something that's
It's
not
very
random.
similar to this, but rather than a random pattern,
You make Abe Lincoln's face out of it.
exactly. You read my mind, yes.
You design something with it.
It was just a thought.
Okay. That's definitely something we can take back to the architects and see if they
Gareth,
put
I'm
something a little bit
going
more.
to dispectfully disagree with you.
Disagree on that, okay.
I actually like what they have.
Yeah, it's-
Okay, okay.
This
But,
is
you
a little
know,
bit
I
more
like it too,
common in the
so.
industry right now, using multicolors, randomized patterns.
I'm fine with
So the definite takeaway is the darker, earther. So if there's no further comment on these items, I would like to jump in. We've got, jump right into the neg deck and the EAS. Sure. A little bit more.
Sorry about that. Before Ruby speaks about the neg deck request, I wanted to address one of the comments on the moss versus the grass. You know, just for peace of mind, because when things get said on the meeting, I don't want inaccurate information go out to the public. So we are very cognizant of the receiving body of the Croton River. So we don't, that's what all the chemical containment is for this plant, and we treat fertilizer and any other potential chemicals used outside the same way. We charged our engineer and architects with disturbing as limited space as possible and restoring everything back to its natural vegetative state when we can, either via new plantings or not touching it and creating buffer zones for construction. But we do things now. We mulch in place. We don't use fertilizer. But there are certain components to having a slope stability mix placed on some of those areas that need to maintain the slope for some moss, which is subject to heavy rain conditions could cause slope failure, and we definitely don't want that, because that's probably the worst thing that can happen to a receiving stream, is that all the silt and everything washed down into it. So all that said, we don't have that issue with the receiving stream now. Everything that we're doing is downstream of the reservoir, and the reservoir is the raw water source for this plant. So there's no potential for contamination if and when we ever did do something like that. I just wanted to clarify that for the public.
I'm sure there are ground cover plantings that
Yeah.
would
Right.
get you where Mark is
Yeah.
looking to be.
And I understood.
And it would retain the soil
Yeah.
a lot better than moss would.
And we will look at it in every way that we can, but we do have to keep in mind, this is, this is gonna be, we have everything that we can inside the building envelope, but there has to be areas for use today, use tomorrow, lay down areas, access areas, mobilization areas that we need to keep open and can't really allow them to go back to their complete natural state or wooded area without worrying about clearing it. Second point is, I asked the question of Michael, how long it would take to possibly give you something to chew on with relating to the darker colors you selected. So maybe by the end of the week, we might be able to get you the two renderings to look at side by side. And again, I want to highlight that the computerized rendering does a little bit more for the color than I think you're going to see exists. So we'll leave this in the planning office if you want to reference it, but keep these in mind when you're looking at the renderings, and you'll have both renderings to look at hopefully by the end of this week or early following.
That's not going to hinder you getting your grant on Friday, is it?
Well, the
we don't
grant,
have
the
that.
grant is an application.
Okay.
So I hopefully we get it. And no,
I have something else I want to just bring up. First of all, I just want to say I want to thank Dana, and I want to thank the people that work at the plant for giving me that tour like around a month and a half ago. It was actually very, it was worth it. Last week in Chicago, there was an explosion at a water treatment plant. And then I went online and I started looking at a few other plants. And I'll bring up why I'm saying this. So, Chicago, 5 days ago, Kansas City, January 18, Santa Paula, 2014, Nash County, 2017, Billings, Montana, 2018, and I think Digester, Pennsylvania, 1987. All had explosions at these water treatment plants dealing with the chemicals. I know I'm the planning board. I'm 100% in favor of this thing. When I walked this plan and I saw the plans, I asked the question at the time, I said, what about sprinklers? And I was told, it's a water treatment plant, we don't need sprinklers. I'm very concerned, and I brought it up at the first time you brought this matter up, and I looked at this negative deck with all the chemicals that are there. I am still very concerned about beryllium, fluoride, hydrogen sulfide, all these materials that can cause an explosion. And I don't know everything. I'm just concerned about some of those items. I want to make sure that this building is the safest one in the country, safest one in New York State. I don't want to approve something or have my name on it with a building that may not have sprinklers in every part of that property, especially where there are chemicals. I think what you're doing with this plant is phenomenal. Okay, what it's doing. I'm also, other part is think, and I don't know if it's the engineer, just think carefully. God forbid something happens to that plant. I know you have a generator room outside, but I see, looking at the place, I see everything with gauges and everything like that, knobs and everything like that, that if power went down in an old-fashioned plant, they can go and adjust all those things. Then you see the new part, and it's a computer monitor, and then with a keyboard. And God forbid something happens, there's no knobs or anything like that in this new plant to adjust something. God forbid something happens. Yes, it's a water treatment plant. I'm just, as a resident of this town, and I want you to think outside the box in such a manner to protect the citizens of our town, dealing with the controls of
Okay,
that.
Mark, I think
And
they get the point.
apologize.
I think they get the point. If you have a response to that at this point.
The sprinklers is of major concern to me.
Well, our understanding, we've worked through with the planning board that, pardon me, the fire marshal went through the permitting process. We're just simply not required to put in fire protection systems in all areas, nor are they appropriate for all areas. We have our chemical systems. Several of our chemicals do not play nice with water. So if you put in sprinkler systems, you're actually doing a disservice to the fire department.
There are other ANSIL systems, there are other systems besides water to negate a fire, an explosion or something. It's not just a regular sprinkler, it could be something else.
Correct.
We've all, in this day and age, we know there's many different ways. I would like a safe plant. It's right near residential. This is a plant that's truly needed because we don't have enough water, but I really want it to be safe for the workers in that plant.
Absolutely.
For the neighbors nearby.
It's actually to the workers, to Andy and his team, that do the best effort for maintaining the facility to provide it in its safest capacity, minimizing any risk for issue. That's through preventative maintenance, all their programs of that nature. That's really where you're going to do your best job at preventing a catastrophic accident.
Okay, and you've already dealt with this issue with the fire department?
Yes, but also to your point of knobs and what have you, the entire facility could be run manually if required. If they lost the computer system, they could go back to old systems, and then you turn equipment on locally, and you have to radio back and forth with, and then, but if
But the
that
old
were to
systems are
happen-
in the old plants. That's being
No, this is
taken.
the new facility. I understand more and more gets computer controlled and it has more remote capability, but that does not take away our ability to operate equipment locally.
You know, I suddenly got this image of the Flintstones with the cars where you have to use your feet. Effectively, you're saying that even with the computerized systems, there are still manual controls in the
Correct,
system.
and these are all needed to start the facility up in the first place, to prove out the computer systems.
Okay, any other issues you want to address? Oh, by the way, you folks had a response to the county's,
Yeah, on Friday, we received the response letter to the town board's issuance of notice of lead agency. So in response to that, they had a few comments, and it did result in some changes to the negative declaration. Previously, it was indicated that it would be unlisted. Given the new comments that we received, it would be changed to a type 1 action. At the end of the day, it does not change anything to our recommendations and findings. We still believe it to be a negative declaration. We can walk you through those changes, but it does center around mainly a bald eagle potential habitat area in the area of the project facility.
What letter was that you're referring to?
I can actually give you a hard copy.
Is it from the DEC?
Yes, it was from DC. This is what I'm looking for, the letter that you're talking about. So that's the copy that you've got, and this is the revised letter which incorporates.
Right, but you just mentioned the letter from the county.
From the DC. Yeah.
Okay.
Do not have that. Let me check my own file.
you need the negative declaration.
Could you send me hard copies of all this stuff? Of the letters?
Let me check one last time.
Sorry. You could just send a hard copy. You send the plans. Maybe,
This is a copy of the letter. It's been scribbled on with some of our staff's notes, but it goes through a few items. The other that's related, which was also another item, was the proximity to the old Croton Aqueduct, which we were already aware of, and we already plan on developing the construction protection plan. So it ultimately didn't impact the plans for the project. It just changes the secret status.
so this is mailed last Friday?
Correct.
And did you get it in the mail today or something?
No, we got on Friday and today, yesterday and today, unfortunately with the Labor Day weekend, yesterday and today, we revised the associated documents. The EA forms, the neg deck on your behalf, to have them ready if the town was willing to move forward with the resolution.
Okay, so it explains why it's a type 1 action, which is fine. And you say there are some amendments you'd like to make to the neg deck?
What I provided you is a copy of the original drafted letter, and that's got a couple of flags on it. That's the original, correct?
Right.
And then on the corresponding copy, you'll see these are the only changes.
So do you want to go through those changes with the planning board?
Absolutely. The only change was a change from the unlisted as the secret status to a type 1 action. And in section 7 of this letter, we're recommending, this is the neg deck letter. Previously in threatened species, it focused primarily on a long-nosed bat, long-eared bat? Long-eared bat. And now, in addition to the long-eared bat, we make the references recommended by DEC to the bald eagle.
So you're going to need to read into the record the changes you'd like to make.
Oh, okay.
And this, and to the board.
Sure.
And into the record, so that the board can hear what the changes are, so they can adopt the neg deck as amended.
Okay.
If you're so inclined.
If you're so inclined.
Yes. We like bald eagle.
We should put this in the record.
That's addressed to.
For the record, before the board is a notice of determination of non-significance, would be a negative declaration for the State Environmental Quality Review Act. The changes that we are recommending would be on page 1, where it indicates the secret status. The change would be from unlisted action. The new status would be a type 1 action.
And could you just explain the difference?
I can explain. Any unlisted action that is occurring wholly or partially within or substantially contiguous to any historic building, structure, facility, site, or district or prehistoric site is considered a type 1 action. So it changes an unlisted action to a type 1 action. And since this project is adjacent to the old Croton Aqueduct, which is listed on the State and National Register of Historic Places, this unlisted action becomes a type 1 action.
We should reflect that there was a letter issued by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation dated August 31st, 2018, that apparently went to the applicant, but I don't think the planning board officially received it yet. We haven't seen it, but we should make this letter part of our record. So they're raising the fact that the old Croton Aqueduct is on the State and National Register of Historic Places, so that's why this elevates to a type 1 action instead of an unlisted action.
Okay, so we'll have a copy of that.
We can definitely provide you with a clean copy of the correspondence we referred to.
And they also raised the issue, I believe, of the bald eagle, right?
Yes, that's the primary change to the neg deck.
Right, and he's going to read that change.
The change to the neg deck resolution appears in section 7 under the header of threatened, endangered, and species of special concern. The section as revised reads as follows. The New York Natural Heritage Program, the NHP, was consulted in 2017 to obtain a list of flora and fauna that are protected by state or federal rules and regulations. On June 12, 2017, NHP provided a response that there were no records of rare or state-listed animals or plants or significant natural communities at the project site, and did not report them to be within the project vicinity. Additionally, the State's Fish and Wildlife Services, the USFWS, Information for Planning and Conservation, IPAC, online tool was queried for a list of federally protected species that have the potential to occur in the proposed project area. The species reported from IPAC included the Indiana bat, Mitosis sodalis, and northern long-eared bat, Mitosis septentrionalis. More recently, according to correspondence received from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, NYSDEC, Division of Environmental Permits, Region 3, on August 31st, 2018, the site is located within or near records of bald eagles and or their habitat. Prior to construction, New York State DEC would be contacted to determine if any new records of bald eagles are present in the vicinity of the project site. Should bald eagles' nests or nests be identified or observed during construction, all work within 660-foot buffer area of the nests would be immediately halted. At that time, coordination with USFWS would be initiated to implement measures to ensure that the bald eagle nest in the project area would not be impacted due to Innybrook Water Treatment Plant project. In accordance with all the applicable bald eagle management regulations. Bald eagle management regulations include the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act and the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, as well as recommendations from the USFWS National Bald Eagle Management Guidelines. The results of habitat assessments performed found potential suitable habitat for the 2 species of bat. Suitable. Oh, okay. So, sorry, I could keep going, but then it's the same. So for the record,
That's
that
sufficient?
basically represents the change.
That's fine. And did you say you emailed that?
Earlier today.
Okay, so I have that, I can incorporate that into the negative declaration.
Okay, so subject to these actual amendments as given to us. All right, okay. Anything else on your presentation? You could continue with the rest of it.
Overall, it's just a general summary of some of the items that we're hoping to obtain as referenced. The resolution regarding the negative declaration. We've already provided the information for the lead agency, but ultimately for our our grant application, we do need the EA signed again. We revised it based upon the incorporation of the references to the bald eagle, and we have copies of that available for your use.
And the change to text one, right?
So you want to sign sign part 2? Is that what you're asking for?
Part 1, 2, and 3.
Well, you signed part 1, right?
Yes.
So you want part 2 signed by the town?
As lead
Yes.
agent, I believe. Yes.
Okay. We can provide that.
And we have to provide environmental bulletin notice.
Yes. Hi, Chairman and members of the board. Yes, part of the change from the project being listed previously unlisted and now being type 1 is that there's a noticing requirement as part of type 1 actions.
Right, there's a
So
filing
that's-
requirement, so you would need to provide us with a carbon copy list of the agencies you want this to go to, and then we can send a notice to the ENB, but you won't have that by Friday. I mean, you won't have the published article in the ENB by Friday.
Right, because it takes a week. That's true.
Right. So we can give you the notice that we're going to send to them by Friday.
Okay.
We can give you a signed type 2, part 2. Sandy will have the resolution in the minutes of the meeting, and anything else you need we can provide. And then I guess you can get the published article in the bulletin to them later on if you want.
Yeah, that should work. The other thing we would need, or I guess if we were prepared to, if you would ask us to, we could have prepared the notice for ENB, but that's perfectly fine if you'd like to. Just so that you know, in the ENB, you'd also have to note where the EA would be made available for a publicly accessible location for the EA. That's usually, as you probably
It'll
know,
be in
that's
the
usually
planning board
included
office.
in the ENB. Okay. I believe that's all we need. I'll just add, I know Paul had mentioned that I would say a little bit about the grant, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but we really appreciate, on behalf of the village as well, your help today. It's up to, EFC could administer up to $13 million worth of grant money for this important project, which I know is important for both the town and the village. So we appreciate your assistance in this. I'm happy to answer any specific questions you have on the grant, but I think that's the main takeaway.
I'm not sure if it's under the same category, but on this secret negative declaration thing that we got in the mail the other day, I think today, whatever it was, it says the tree restoration plan for the proposed project will be developed to meet these requirements. And I know that we're taking down 81 trees, but is the village and the town are paying for this whole project, but it's saying here, payment of a fee to the tree bank fund may be made to satisfy the tree replacement requirement. Do we have to have our town and our village pay for tree replacement? It's like, or just let it go? And why do we have to pay twice in a way, is what I'm saying is. We're asked, in this thing, it's saying,
Yeah,
have the
that's-
village pay.
Right, that's the applicant's wording pretty much out of the environmental assessment. I guess it would have to go to the town board perhaps.
I don't think that we as the town, I
it's a-
don't think they should be
I understand,
penalized
Mark,
to pay
but
for trees.
it's above our pay grade here in this room. I suppose if they wanted to approach the town board, they could.
The town's not funding the bond, it's due to all the village expense that would eventually, as the applicant. I think the tree planting program needs to be developed. We did consider doing something collectively with the town. If we can't place all the trees in the town, maybe we would put them somewhere in the village and that would still count. But I think that boilerplate language that you're reading there now is really in reference to what any other applicant would be allowed to do if the town saw fit to take the money and determine where the trees go in the town versus them citing it on their site disturbance.
Right, there are basically three ways that you can comply with the tree protection law. One is to provide trees on your own site, one is to provide trees off-site, and the third is to provide, with the approval of the town board, that is off-site. And then the third method is to provide money for a tree bank fund as per the town board's requirement.
But we're asking the village and the town to pay for this
The
when.
village.
Right, but
Just the village.
just
The
yeah,
village.
Mark,
Just the village.
I don't think it's an issue for us
Okay.
at this point. I do have a question that pops up though. I mean, has the tree bank been done yet?
No,
Okay, just wondering.
no.
All right. So anything else on your presentation?
Just one other point of clarification, if possible, a certified copy of the resolution declaring lead agency status, and a certified copy of the resolution for the neg deck.
Instead of waiting for the minutes, why don't I draft up a resolution after the fact, after you adopt the neg deck as amended tonight? I'll whip up a resolution and get it to the village.
If you find any objections to that? No. More comment.
Certified by who?
With the same word.
Certified by who?
Or you could certify it as the planning board secretary.
Yeah, the
This is a
secretary
true
will
and
certify.
exact copy of the.
While we're working out the details, why don't I make a motion to adopt the neg deck as amended?
Before,
Wait, yeah.
let's make a motion first to accept lead agency status and
Okay.
We haven't done that?
we,
No, apparently not. Motion to,
Motion.
okay, to second for it?
I second it.
Okay. Any objections? No, so we're accepting the, becoming the lead agency. Now, motion to adopt the neg deck.
as amended.
Okay, as amended.
I second that.
Great. Okay, no
Thank you. I had 2
objections?
seconds.
We just wanted to make sure that was the case.
As a final act, I have a couple of hard copies of some of the documents that we've referenced and looked at on the screen today. I can leave them with you for ease of reference.
So I guess your next step
Sorry?
in the process
Yeah,
is
Sandy gets
to go to the zoning board, right?
Correct.
And then you'll come back before this board for site plan. So,
And ARB,
and ARB,
and wetlands,
and what?
whatever else they need.
Could I also possibly ask Kathy, because of the interior plans of this, if we can have them like taken down from our website?
I think we did that.
Okay, just
There
don't.
are none.
They're
Yeah, we
gone?
took- We
Okay.
took them down from the website because of
I just, yes.
Homeland
This
Security
issue
concerns.
came up a while ago.
Okay, I wasn't in that last.
Yeah, we were just like,
I just,
okay. Any other questions from the board?
I just got one quick question.
Ah.
How are you filing this on Friday?
The,
The
The
grant?
grant application?
grant application.
Electronically.
And what time?
by 5 o'clock.
Okay.
We can coordinate with you over there.
That would be great. I'm going to be out of the office for all morning tomorrow morning.
And one of the important things, I've got a copy of what we need. I can leave with you.
Okay, great,
So,
great. I want to make sure it gets done.
9 a.m. on Friday, right?
More or less.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, question, did we have, by the way, have to make a motion on the first item to adjourn it for a specific date?
A motion would be good.
Okay, going back to the first item on the agenda, could I have a motion for setting the date certain for the continuation of the public hearing?
Yeah.
October 3rd. I'll second it.
Second, okay. Okay, third item on this agenda is the learning experience, sorry, was there any members of the public who wanted to speak on that matter, on the water treatment plant? Yes. Hearing none, okay. The third item on this agenda is the learning experience childcare facility, 530 North State Road, site plan review.
Call me like in the afternoon.
Absolutely, I just want to not take anybody else's material.
I'm sure I have.
Is that public hearing?
You don't hear from me by 1 o'clock.
It's on the cover memo.
Village public hearing or closing as well?
Well, for the water treatment plant, we just accepted the neg deck, that's all, we didn't.
You adopted a negative.
And you issued a neg deck.
Right, but we did we close a public hearing?
No.
No.
Yeah, I didn't.
And technically, I think they'd have to notice the public hearing for site plan, because I think they just noticed it generally, but they have to now notice the neighbor requirement, right, within a certain amount.
I think they did that.
Oh, they did that, okay. They did the certified mailings and all that, for the mailings?
Yes.
Okay, then yes, then we should just continue the public hearing.
Continue, okay.
So I'll take a motion for continue on October 3rd as well, motion? Okay. Okay, second?
And we may just want to, at that point, continue it again, because they
Right.
may not be through with the
They might
zoning
not
board
be.
process. They should go get their variances first
But
before
we still
coming.
need it on, we still need a resolution for the specific date. Okay. Okay, learning experience.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Adam Weichstein from law firm Cockerman, Tortorella, and Weichstein on behalf of the applicant. I'm here with our environmental consultant, Jay Payne, as well as our architect and a representative of the applicant, Matthew Jarmel. Our submission of August 22nd addressed concerns raised by the board and in Becky Clark's previous memo. Since then, we have already received the memo of your wetlands and environmental consultant of August 31st. We're here tonight to address some of those issues. I would just like to set the stage. If you'll recall, the site we're talking about, this 1 acre site, is currently used, as you know, predominantly for storage. It's a largely dormant site. It's a site with uncontrolled runoff, virtually no vegetation other than some invasive species, no regulated trees under the Ossining Code, and we submit that our proof will show, if it has not shown, that the improvements we're proposing, including stormwater management, including wetlands mitigation, will actually improve the environmental conditions as they exist today. And the second aspect of that is the use we're proposing is not only what I would call a benign use, a use that's permitted as of right by zoning, but a use that will perform a real service and have real value to the community. Now, having said that, I know the concerns that were expressed by the board last time and certainly further elaborated on in Mr. Coleman's memo related largely to the water course at the back of the property. So what I would like to do is turn this over to Jay Payne so he can orally present his findings, his recommendations, and take you through a mitigation plan, and then address any comments or questions that the board may have.
record, Jay Fain and Associates, 134 Mound Hill Road, Fairfield, Connecticut. I'm an environmental consultant for the project. Because I haven't appeared before this board before, I'd just like to quickly review my qualifications. I have an associate's degree from Paul Smith College in Ecology and Environmental Technology, a BS from Cornell University in Wildlife Ecology, a master's in Cornell University in Forest Ecology. I've been a practicing environmental consultant for over 35 years. For 25 of those years, I was wetland inspector for the town of Lewisboro. I provided wetland consulting for the town of North Castle, North Salem, Portland, Rowan-on-Hudson in New York, and in Connecticut, Westport, Greenwich, Wilton, Fairfield, New Canaan, and Darien. I performed over 2,000 wetland delineations and hundreds, if not thousands, of wetland evaluations. I've worked on the preparation of dozens of environmental impact statements that are in forward partial things. Excuse me, for my professional affiliations, I'm a professional soil scientist. I'm a certified professional in soil and erosion control, and I am a certified environmental restoration practitioner from the Society of Environmental Restoration. I understand some of you are interested in that field. I brought a flyer from the New England chapter. We're having a conference in October. It's going to have some interesting subjects, including some dam removal workshops and some wetland and watercourse restoration workshops. So I'll hand these down.
Thanks.
Sorry I wasn't here at the last meeting. I had a family matter with my son's graduation, and family comes first, so I apologize I wasn't here, and apologize if my presence caused any, or my absence caused any misunderstanding. I want to go over the overall existing conditions, and I want to step back from the site itself at 530 North State Road and talk a little bit about watershed characteristics and the origin of the watercourse that traverses the site. You have to excuse me when I break these microphones. I printed out a copy of the Westchester GIS map of the region, and I didn't include the entire watershed because I couldn't fit it on the sheet, but I wanted to at least give you a context. The watercourse system originates up here in Ryder Park. There's a nice wetland system over here. There's an impoundment on the park here. When I did some field investigation, I found that there is drainage from the existing fields in the park itself that does drain into this watercourse system at the upper part. That is of concern because obviously this is a maintained area. I'm not sure what the program is for maintenance of the fields here, but typically that would be a source of some type of pollution to the system. This area up here, that was an area of Leicester soils, it's a very nice wetland system. I would say that that's an important filter for the system itself. As we move downstream, it becomes more channelized, it starts going to the more urbanized areas. There's an impoundment on this property here, and it's very well maintained, it's very nice. There's a dam here. The stream becomes channelized through this section here. Very nice looking and almost montane in its characteristics. But as we cross Ryder Road, things start to go horribly wrong. In the past land use practices, as we head towards 530 North State Road, stream becomes more channelized, and then as we get along the frontage here, it's been culverted across this property here under North State Road. Briefly daylights in our property here. It's culverted through the property. Again, it's daylights across the rear of our property. Some of it is on our property, most of it isn't, and then from here down all the way to Blue Lantern Hill, except for a short 6-foot section, the stream is contained in 2 48-inch culverts. And it goes on to Blue Lantern Hill in this location here. There's an impoundment here. Then it generally follows along Chapcar Road. As it goes under Route 9A, there's a very nice wetland system here that I would consider an important part of the treatment train for this water course. This would be very good biooxidation basin, and an important part of the treatment for the degradation that occurs from the urban land use here, and then eventually it finds its way to the Mechanical River. Okay, then we're going to zoom in a little bit on the site itself. As Council said, it's highly disturbed. The vegetation is what we call mostly rootal. That means it's due to a disturbance on the site. The soils themselves are unstable. Let's give it a close up. Okay, just for context, here's our site. Property line here. Property line here. We can't really see the stream in the back here because of the dense vegetation, but pretty much proceeds along the back of the property. We have that small opening here where the culverts come out here, then enters 248-inch culverts and proceeds to the back of the property. Okay. Again, highly disturbed. That's from the past land use as a nursery, and from the present land use as a bobcat dealer. They run the machines there, they disturb the soil. Vegetation that comes in here is there in response mostly to the unstable soil conditions, the disturbance conditions, what they call invasive, mostly invasives, ragwort. There's Japanese knotweed. There's a bunch of stuff in there, mugwort. That's not desirable and is not fulfilling the ecological function of protecting the water course that it should. My findings show that this area here, all the way down, was probably once a wetland, you know, historically, probably over 100 years ago. It was filled. My feeling is that at one time, this was a braided wetland system. The stream moved through this entire area. Now it's confined to the water channel here and to the culverts in the back of the property. That gives a much less chance for biooxidation, for natural processes to occur. Primary function now, because of all these things that have occurred, is stormwater conveyance. And the linear nature allows little chance for settling or biooxidation or water quality improvement. Just moves through there very fast. There's very little settling that can occur, very little biological action that can occur. And within those culverts, that's basically not something that can occur. Just wanted to talk a little bit about my characterization in my report of the stream. It's intermittent in nature. It certainly is a low base flow. It's well under 1 CFS. And I can't go out onto a site and stay there for 3 years and watch a site and determine if it dries up or not. So I used the available resource information that was available to me, and that included the Westchester GIS, the New York State DEC Environmental Mapper, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Mapper. And then none of these resources have identified this water course, which typically means it's not a perennial stream course. However, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if it's low flow or intermittent, because we recognize the value of the resource, and we plan the project not just to protect, but to store the buffer and to enhance the existing stream segment. You know, if it comes up, right now we have no plans to touch the stream or its banks. We prefer not to do that. We want to stay away from the stream as much as possible. However, if it does come up and there is an issue of whether it's intermittent or perennial in terms to Article 15 of the New York State DEC, I've talked to Josh Fisher, who's the biologist for the DEC. He's willing to come down and make the determination. We'll abide by whatever he has to say on that. So it's really not a non-issue in my mind. It's just my characteristic of the stream based on my professional experience and the physical attributes of the stream. I want to talk a little bit more about, and I think I'm going to let the architect expound on this a little bit after I finish. At the June 6th?
June 20th.
No, before the meeting before that.
June 6th.
June 6th meeting, we presented the plan. At that time, there was some concern regarding the landscape buffer. Some of the board members expressed concern that we retain or provide an entire 20-foot landscape buffer for the rear of the property. And the applicant has complied with that. There is a 20-foot complete landscape buffer. With the widening of the buffer, we were able to expand on the buffer to the watercourse system also, which is a good thing. We were able to achieve that wider buffer by limiting a few parking spaces and shifting the playground area. And again, I'm going to let the applicant explain that a little bit more in detail in terms of the program. We did make those changes. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about what we, at this point we have a system that has suffered because of the past land use of the property. And I see this as an opportunity. We can work and recreate a buffer here that provides some of the features that are not present. We can increase wildlife value. We can increase storm renovation value by incorporating some measures on this property. So we looked at it, different things that we could possibly do, and we came up with a 5-prong or 5-tier layer of protection for the stream system. Number one would be to remove the invasive species that are on the property. They're not desirable, they're not performing a good ecological function, and they degrade the system. Number two is, after we remove those species, we provide a robust planting of native plants with high wildlife pollinator value to act as both a buffer and a filter and to provide wildlife value. And also, which we've done, and we do have a plant list, these are all native plants, they all are deer resistant, and they all do have high wildlife value. And we spread them out throughout the buffer area in the rear of the property. We've also taken that a step further. The whole entire landscape plan for the property incorporates native plants, and that with higher wildlife value. And I think there's a memo from a neighboring property owner that commends us on that. But it's something that we normally do in our projects, and we think it's important. And if you're familiar with the work of Doug Talamy, he advocates that some of these smaller areas, pocket areas, can be enhanced for wildlife habitat by using native wildlife species. It provides good food for native insects, which in turn provides food for other wildlife, and it all moves up the food chain. So it's a good policy in and of itself. So the third tier of protection we have, there is a playground here. And instead of making it grass or something like that, where you might have some runoff, we've made it out of a pervious surface, so the water will infiltrate into that area and be treated in the below ground reservoir rather than run off toward the stream itself. So we have again, the planted buffer, we have the pervious playground area that will act as a buffer itself. Then for the parking lot itself, we're going to collect the water and store it in underground storage system, which will help to mitigate stormwater peaks. Also will give us some settling from some of the coarser material. But we've also, in addition to that, provided a proprietary oil and grit separator to polish the stormwater generated from those impervious areas. So we have another layer of protection that we're providing. So I guess I see this as an opportunity. I know we have a degraded wetland system, or degraded, not wetlands, a degraded system overall. And when I see that, I think that, what we need to do is not just do the status quo, we need to make it better. So I think this is an opportunity. Number one, we get to provide closure to an existing unstable and undesirable situation under the current land use. Number two, we get to determine a final use for the site that is environmentally sensitive. I don't think it can get better than a daycare center, and is good for a taxpayer base and minimal use of the town resources. Provides for restoration and enhancement of a degraded ecosystem that will protect and enhance the aquatic system. It gives control over the resource where none currently exists. I think that's important. And it makes sure there is no further encroachment into the wetland system, to make sure the restoration is carried out and can be monitored for at least a period of 5 years. So again, I see this as a win-win situation. I think we've worked hard to come up with a plan that works on this site, and I think we've done a good job. I think I'm just going to turn it over to the sorry, I'm just
I have one question. You said there were 5 items in the beginning, and you only mentioned 4 out of the 5.
I thought I did 5. I'll go through for the mitigation. We have the remove the invasive species, provide a robust planting of native plants with high wildlife pollinator value. We have the pervious playground. We have the underground storage system, which helps knock off storm peaks, and we have the proprietary oil and grit separator to take that material and clean it up, polish it up before we release it. Sure.
May I ask
Sure.
a couple questions? Hi.
Hi.
So, when I read your report, there were 2 things in particular that jumped out at me. One you've already spoken about, which was you're designating it, the stream, as intermittent. And you're right, you haven't spent years watching that stream, observing it, but I have. And I know it to be perennial during hot summers as well as this wet summer, which our own wetland consultant described this summer as. I would like to see it, for the record, be designated as a perennial stream. Second, the second item that was troublesome to me in your report was no mention of the fish species that are found in the stream, at least the 2 that I've seen on multiple occasions. And you made no mention of them, and in fact, our own wetland consultant made no mention of them. And I was surprised because they are abundant. When you visited the site, may I ask, did you observe the fish?
No, I did.
Did you, were your boots in the stream? Were you walking around to be able to see the fish?
To be honest with you, the first time I was on the site, when I did the wetland delineation, I actually had a broken leg.
You had a broken leg, okay.
I had broke my leg the year before, and I had 17 pins in my leg. So I wasn't like able. Yeah, I did as much observation as I can, but I did have a physical handicap that prevented me from going into the stream itself. I'm not surprised to hear that. I've seen fish in Walmart parking lot outfalls. Nature never ceases to surprise me how resilient and how it is. So I'm not surprised to hear that. But again, our plan is not to do anything that would impair that.
Yeah, I understand. I was concerned largely just for the permanent record. Could I request that you, if it's okay with the board, that I request you to observe the fish and make note of them in an addendum to your report? And I can tell you an easy way to see them. You know, the daylighted section that is between the front of the Bobcat, front of the Bobcat store now and the road, there's that little swale opening. They're actually right in there too. So you don't even have to go into the stream. So I would be very grateful if you could go make that observation yourself. You will find black-nosed dace and creek chub.
I understand that you saw those there, and I took note of it.
Okay, great. If you could make a written note of that and make it a part of your report, that would go a long way to satisfying my concerns.
I can only speak I have a client I have to answer to, and again, I understand your concern, and I will consult the client.
Sure, sure. One other thing, I wonder if you could, you with your client's agreement, agree to abide by the New York State DEC's guidelines. They're not requirements, but guidelines for fish passage specifications in culverts.
Yes. We're not going to touch, I don't have any plans to touch any of the stream itself. Understand that Mr. Coleman made some recommendations. We'll look at his recommendations.
Are you planning to change the culverting that goes through the system?
No.
Okay. And you're going to keep the daylighting? The spot daylighted area?
Yes.
Okay.
We're not planning on touching it at all. Again, I'm very sensitive to the issue. The only thing I do want to do, and this is for stabilization, there's no head wall on the pipes itself right now, so the dirt washes right in. I propose to put 2 gabion baskets on either side of the pipes in the rear there to act as a retaining wall to stop stuff from running into the stream.
In the front or in the far back?
In the far back.
That's on the sides of the pipe that won't additionally, that won't make it more of a perched pipe.
We're not going to touch, and I don't want to touch the stream itself. Mr. Coleman said maybe we want to do something. We'll take his comments under advisement, trying to do as little as we can in that. If we have to do anything, I'd like to do it with bioengineering rather than with physical structures. So that's the approach that we'd like to take. If we have to do that, we'll take it. But I just got Mr. Coleman's memo on Monday or Tuesday, and I haven't had a chance to digest it fully. So we'll respond.
So my 2 requests, just to reiterate them, are please take the historical observations of at least myself, and I think some other members of the board know this to be true, that it's a perennial stream. And secondly, please do make a last field trip just to identify those fish and make those a part of it.
Sure.
And that would go a long way for
Okay.
making
I
that
think that we can convince our client of that.
Not to commit him, he is a fully healed lake. He will go do the observations.
Okay, thank you very much.
Jerry, you want to just walk quickly through the plan? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gerard Cesario. I'm the civil engineer for the project. I think Mr. Fain did a good job of describing the existing conditions and what we're proposing, so I won't repeat what he's done. What I will do is just summarize quickly the changes that were made since our original submission. Those changes were based on board comments and the review memos from the board's professionals. As Mr. Fain stated, we accommodated the board's request by providing the 20-foot rear yard buffer, which is now heavily vegetated. So that area was, plantings were increased. To do that, we had to rearrange the play area and the parking area slightly. So the play area got moved forward and kind of squared off. We lost a few hundred square feet of play area, and we reduced the pavement area, which isn't a bad thing. But by doing so, we did lose 1 parking spot, and we changed the circulation to a one-way circulation because we had to narrow the end islands to accommodate that 20-foot buffer. So where we were at 36 spaces, we are at 35 spaces now. We also added a full sidewalk along the property frontage that was requested, and we provided fencing protection at the entrance that we were just speaking of, where the water course crosses North State Road and goes into the twin culverts. We provided fencing, and it's also vegetated around there. There were other changes that were made, but most of them dealt with adding notes to the plans. We also revised the lighting plan so that the lighting temperature, or the color degrees Kelvin of the lamps are a maximum 3,000. There was one comment, I think it was mentioned in the memo we just received tonight, that we did not provide. It was the request for an additional space to be blocked out in front of the site for access. The reason we did not do that is there's a couple of reasons. One, those are the prime drop-off spots for parents. Those are the spaces they use. And the second is, we currently already have striped space between the handicap spots, which are rarely used, that people can access from. And we also have what we call a stroller access, which is a 5-foot wide striped area and another depressed curb. So there are two means for people to go from the center parking to the building without walking, squeezing between cars. And we're down to 35 spaces, which is kind of the minimum that's preferred for this operation. And as I mentioned, these front spaces are what the parents typically use, and prefer not to lose another of those spaces for them, and have them use the center spaces and have to cross the aisle. So that's really a summary of what we changed in order to accommodate, and we think we've accommodated just the board professionals' comments from their original review letter.
It's not working now. You turned it off?
Did I turn it off? Okay. So we believe we addressed the board professionals' comments the best we can, and that's all I have. Unless there are questions on the site.
Dave, did you have any comments?
I do have some comments, and we should have the memo there. There may be some extra copies as well. Yep, copies. More than one copy?
Of your recent memo?
Yeah.
We got it tonight, yes.
I just scanned it and I happened to see that.
I just wondering if you have several copies.
We have two.
Okay, good. All right. So why don't we jump to the middle of page 2 regarding signage. And there are two particular sections of the zoning law, and one of those two sections says that for a building-mounted sign, it can't exceed 2 feet in height. So for that sign above the front door, it'd be good to have a detail of that with dimensions on it and colors. And then there's a section that says that in this zoning district, freestanding signs can't exceed 20 square feet, and what's being proposed now is 39.7 square feet. Remaining on signage for a minute, we make a comment on the top of page 3, and you don't have an interpretation by the building inspector yet, do you?
We do not.
Okay, so this is the issue of those blocks that are in front of the building, next to the front door, and whether they constitute a sign or not. So the building inspector should be asked to, we can ask him on this end to make an interpretation as to whether you need to go to the zoning board of appeals for that. We did comment at the bottom of page 2, I think it was Greg's comment originally perhaps, to have that area in the parking lot in front of the front door as a non-parking space for people to use to walk into the site. That was responded to tonight. I don't know how the board feels about that, or whether you want to wait for Greg to come back and talk about that.
Fine with what they proposed.
You guys okay with the deed about it? Yeah.
Okay. And then there was a comment by the county that they suggested the building be reoriented. There was some discussion of that at the last planning board meeting, or the last meeting this was on the agenda that I was here. I don't know if you want to continue to discuss that, or...
We asked, someone asked to rotate it 90 degrees so it's facing the street. I just have one question looking at the plan itself. Because whether or not it can physically happen, I don't know. All the bathrooms that you have there on the plan, let's say the 20th, can they be consolidated in such a manner that, and I know that they're all different age groups and stuff like that, can they be consolidated? If you think about when we all went to elementary school or something like that, you got a whole pass to go to the bathroom. Here you might have a child that's 6 months old, a year, 18 months, whatever it might be, so they might have to be separated in that sense. But if you're able, if it's able, I don't know what the code says about that. If you're able to condense it, then the building footprint gets a little bit smaller by putting the restrooms in a common area.
So, if I may, good evening. I'm Matthew Jarmel. I'm the architect for the project. And if you like, I can qualify myself, but I'm a registered architect in the state of New York. I have a bachelor's of architectural degree from the New Jersey Institute of Technology. I have an MBA with a concentration in real estate development and urban land use from Rutgers University. And I have enjoyed a relationship with the Learning Experience for about 16 years as their primary architect. I've designed upwards of 250 child care centers for them around the country. Your comment is well received in that a lot of schools do in fact do that, but this really is not a school, it's an early childhood development center. It's designed for children that are as young as 6 weeks of age to about 5 or 6 years of age. Many of them aren't toiled in yet in their training. So it's really a safety issue to have the bathrooms directly in the classroom. You may recall, or if you go into a public elementary school, you'll see a kindergarten classroom will have a bathroom in it. So and that's actually typically a facility standard of the State Department of Education. Not so much a building code, but a facility standard. So our preference from an operational standpoint is to have the bathrooms in the rooms so that the teachers and the caregivers stay in the room with the child, so that they don't have to leave and leave the children unattended. In fact, I'll even go further to say that there's 3 different toilet fixture sizes in the building that allow for children of various ages to learn. So that's the preference there.
I agree.
And prior to my standing up I'm sorry, Mr. Hoflich, before your question, there was a question about the county's recommendation on turning the building. Unfortunately, the site has constraints because of the culverts running through it. We can't build a building over the culverts, so we can't really reorient the building. However, what we can do is we can take the elevation that faces North State Road and make it look more like a main entry. So perhaps we could put a gable end on it or a dormer on it so it doesn't look like a side, but looks like a front. If that would please the board, that would be great.
I recommended that in my memo, so I'm glad you picked up on it.
We'd be happy to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're still looking at the site distance measurements for the access point on North State Road. So we'll finish that work. That's it.
What with the parking lot? And you know, I asked for it. I know I'll never get it, but it's okay. I'm resigned to say no on regarding salt or not salt. What are you doing to prevent any of the salt that is being used on the parking lot from going into the culverts?
Well, we have, as Jay mentioned, the stormwater system has a proprietary device for water quality. So after, besides being retained to reduce the runoff, we have a water treatment device.
Is it sloped away from the culvert, from this corner over here where the culvert is, right here in the parking lot? It looks like it's within 5 feet of that culvert right there.
The discharge is, we store the water with the underground pipes. It goes into a water quality treatment device, and then there's a pipe that discharges into the stream.
I'd like to see more detail of that part, because that part concerns me. Right in this one little area right here, salt culvert, within like 4 feet of each other, 4 or 5 feet. I just want to make sure that, it's sloped in such a manner that any salt in there that just goes away. That's the wrong spot. Right here. Culvert right here, culvert right there.
Everything is draining towards the center of the site, to an inlet in the center of the site. We're not proposing to drain anything into that culvert area. The site is graded to an inlet in the center, where it's collected and put into a storm retention system and a water quality device. So all runoff is directed to a low spot in the center of the
I'd like Steve Coleman to just weigh in on whether or not that's fine.
Dan, did you have any comments on this?
Well, they addressed my comments from the last go-around, but we deferred getting into the particulars of the stormwater plan until the site got sort of locked in terms of the buildings and so forth. But to you know, in relation to some of the comments, we're going to want to look a little more carefully once the 4 corners of what's being paved and improved, which sounds like we're sort of getting to at this point. And to one of the other points that I think comes up is there is an obligation to try and do some runoff reduction. So it may be appropriate in some areas to try and look at some permeable surfaces. So once we lock this in, then I think we'll have a discussion with the applicant's engineer and get into the particulars of the stormwater system.
Any other comments from the staff right now? Any comments from the board? Any members of the public present interested in this topic? Okay. What needs to be done at this point on this matter?
Oh,
Some agency stuff.
right. Before you get to Adam, the planning board can acknowledge the fact that it has become the lead agency by virtue of the fact that no one has objected to the planning board's declaration to be lead agency to the other agencies. So you can go ahead and do that.
Motion to accept lead agency?
I'll second that.
Any objections? Okay.
The applicant's going to be, said the applicant was going to be looking at Steve Coleman's letter and responding to that. So that's something that we want to make sure happens. I think Adam may want to talk about seeker, and at some point you may want to have a public hearing started on this.
Okay. Adam, do you have any comments right now?
I would ask that the board open a public hearing at your next meeting or as soon as it can be scheduled. I think there's certainly enough information. We understand we still have to address comments, but there's certainly enough information to give the public and involved agencies an opportunity to make intelligent comment that the board can consider in considering a proposal.
I agree.
Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
All right, so we'll open up on October 3rd.
That would be
It has to be noticed. We'll have to notice the public hearing.
understood. Do we have time, as
Yeah.
we'll do it. We'll work on that.
So you can coordinate with Sam.
We absolutely will.
Any second?
I'll second that. Are you gonna also, with David, with Steve Coleman's, that are you gonna, all his recommendations, you're gonna, respond to every, item by item, whatever he's.
We will do that, and we'll certainly have that in advance of the public hearing. We'll get it to you as soon as we can.
And the mechanism for addressing the two requests I had of you, observing the fish and making a determination of it being perennial. When would that be available?
Well, presumably the discussion of perennial can be in our letter responding to Steve Coleman.
Mhm.
And I think he indicated he thought in some years it would be intermittent, in some years it would be perennial, depending on or not. But I don't think there's any objection on our part to drawing the conclusion that you suggested. As to going out and checking the fish and the species in the stream, I think that's really going to be dependent on Jay's schedule and when he can get out there. So it may be the type of thing that we have to report to you that evening. If we can get it to you sooner, we will.
I would be happy to offer to go with him at any time that's convenient for him, so I can, point to where I've seen him and so forth. I'd be happy to help.
Yeah, no, that would be appreciated. And I also think we need to, we waited until we had this revised set of plans that we thought incorporated some of your comments to have the EAC come out. So that's another thing we'll arrange through the planning. I know they had wanted to undertake a site visit, and we will set that up with them through Sandra.
Anything else we have to do?
I think that's it.
One question, when folks want to give us their CVs, their resumes basically, can we just have them submitted on paper so we don't have to sit here listening to them? As much as we enjoy it, we think our time is better spent listening to your actual substantive comments. Is that okay? Just ask them to give us their resumes beforehand if we're really interested we can read them.
I think this is the first night in decades that we've had two of them.
And
Like
we
to
noticed.
show off.
The poor guy from Cornell has so many debts from school.
Go Big Red.
I promise I will never state mine.
Okay.
It really would be boring.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is Santucci and Schemer subdivision, 37 and 41 Golden Dam Road subdivision and lots. That's fine. Applicant here?
Yes, good evening. My name is Jerry Schwalbe with the firm of Disney Tom Schwalbe.
Oh, just a moment.
Okay.
Was there any members of the public on this matter? Hearing none, okay.
And we were before your board, I think in early June, first time to talk about this project, which is a subdivision, creating two new house sites on about 5 acres of land. With me tonight is Val Santucci and Valerie Schimmer, who are the property owners for the application. We received a letter from F.P. Clark's office regarding some planning comments, which we can go over tonight, and we also received this evening a letter from your town engineer, Dan Ciarcia, with several comments on the site plan, on the subdivision plan as well. We'd like to do whatever you like to, you feel like doing tonight, but we'd like to maybe resolve any open issues you have, or before we make the changes, we have some modifications we want to make to the plan based on these comments. The comments were not substantial in the sense that we won't have major revisions to the plan, so it'll pretty much be the same as you see it. If you don't have it, Sandy, I have a copy of it.
I brought copies.
You do? Okay.
These are dated June 20th, and I believe I gave you a copy of this on June 20th, but I suspected you might not bring them tonight.
Did the applicant receive Dan's comments? Memo?
I did this evening. I had no copy yet.
What's on the bottom? Cindy? What's on the bottom? Fine. So Jerry, did you want to address these individually?
If you like, I can do that. Yes, we can go through those. Sandy, do you have our plan, or should you need have a floppy drive if you like?
Oh,
Is that easier?
we could put that in. Yeah, unless it, what's the last date?
May have been, well, it was for the June 6th plan board meeting, I guess it was.
So the plans were dated May 29th.
Right, right.
Well, 5/29/18, yeah.
Yeah, that should be it.
Those are the ones that I think you sent us the other day. I printed it out.
While she's doing that, so this is basically two parcels, which total about 5 acres in size. On one parcel that is owned by Mr. Santucci, there are 2 homes on that parcel with a single access out to Croton Dam Road. On the other parcel, as you can see on the map now, on the right-hand side is a reconfigured parcelization of the 2 lots to create 2 more lots on the right side, both exceeding the minimum zoning requirements of 15,000 square feet. The site, we're looking at it, we tried to look at other options to the site, but given the characterization of the property, obviously we have existing home sites that we don't want to demolish, and we want to maintain those, so it was a matter of reconfiguring the lot, creating a common driveway to access both those lots. And there are some steep slopes on there, which we also presented in our application. There's a plan that describes the steep slopes in both the before and after condition, and we provide that in the application. So really minimize the amount. Could we squeeze another lot or 2 in there? It might be possible, but given your town's requirements to meet, minimum lot size, but 75% of the minimum lot requirements can't be within steep slopes or wetlands. We don't have wetlands on the property, but we do have some steep slopes. So given that and trying to make a valuable lot arrangement that creates some good value in terms of, it doesn't affect the value of the other lots as well that are there. This seemed to be the most appropriate layout to do. So it creates another driveway separated from the existing driveway, more to the right-hand side of the property. Common portion of the driveway is about 200 feet long, and then it splits into two lots, two driveways for each of the lots. The main driveway, as well as going up the top, is under 14%, so we're did that only because to reduce the amount of truck that we would need to get to each of the building sites. I
Is
think
there,
bad.
apologize, a fire truck? Do we have to have any concern about a fire truck getting to the house in the back?
Yes, and we did look at that, and we're able to get a fire truck through there. So if you look at the main entrance, as it curves in, it's sufficiently wide enough so that the truck could make a turn in there and go up the driveway.
And Dan's first comment is to provide turning templates to show that.
Yeah, and then Dan's letter, which we got this evening.
On the same page?
Same page.
There we are.
Cool.
The existing lot arrangements on the left, there are no proposed changes to those house sites except for the actual physical parcel boundary and to create a parcel between the two homes, which currently don't have that today. So they would lie within their own lot at the end of the day. And obviously there'll be easements, cross easements for access for driveways and so forth on there. Fortunately for this property, there was a sewer and a water line extended to the property up on, it actually comes in from, see if this works on the screen here. It doesn't work. Does it, can you see it? Yeah, right there. Yeah, there's an existing public water and sewer main that come up through the back end of the property that service it now, and we will be extending it through easements as a private sewer lateral, or water lateral for each of the two houses that are planned for the site. So we don't have to worry about septic systems or those kind of things that would take up more land area and also disturbance. What I could do is go through F.B. Clark's letter real quickly, if that's what you'd like to do. Or
I would say if you have a problem with any of them, we should talk about that. Otherwise, it's just a matter of revising the plans.
I agree. I think there's one or two things I'd like to just talk about if we could. One is the tree protection requirements. And in the plan that we proposed, we obviously are taking down a number of trees. The total number of trees that we're removing from the site are 101 trees. And we added up the caliper of the trees, and we have an aggregate of amount of approximately 1,072 inches. We add up all the trees. And predominantly, most of them are 8 inches in size. There are a couple of larger ones, but generally they're in the 8-inch range. We're proposing, that's 101 trees that we're taking out. We're proposing 133 trees, actually putting more trees in than we're taking out. However, we have to start at a smaller size, so we used, and I know David had asked for the sizes of the trees, which we'll give them in a table format for the next submission. But we, averaging out about 2.5 inches per tree, we can get up to about 309 inches. Of the 1,072, your code requires 50% of that be replaced in an equal caliper amount, so that we would be short about 277 inches. We have a lot of trees already shown, as you can see on the planting plan, so we don't want to reforest a potential development lot, building lot, which then, is not a comfortable position to be in when you're trying to market a house or build a development site like this. So we put in what we think is appropriate in the amount of trees. I guess the question is, to rectify that, we would have to go back to the town board, my understanding is, to contribute to a tree fund, which has not yet been established.
There are actually two alternatives. This is at the bottom of page 2. So So, and the nomenclature, the terminology may be a little strange. So one is a tree bank, which is planting trees off-site in places where the town board would agree to that, maybe in town parks conceivably. The other is money into a tree bank fund.
Okay.
So there are two alternatives to planting trees on-site.
I mean, there is another alternative, but I would not recommend it, is to go from 2.5 inch to like a 6-inch tree caliber, which you could meet the requirements probably, but the that many number of trees and the survivability of that many number of trees at that size is an undertaking to be told. So
I think Donna said something a couple weeks ago
Yeah, the
about,
preference is for smaller trees.
the smaller tree the better,
yeah,
because of survivability.
and the cost of larger trees is just
Now,
phenomenal.
when we were talking about the tree bank, the town has set up neither ends of the alternatives, either putting in parks or a fund.
That's correct.
Okay. Is it on the agenda in the near future?
We advise the board of the issue and ask that they consider
We can bring it up again.
And I know you did bring it up.
You've got to, yeah,
Right,
I
did
don't
a
see the
memo.
board as often as Christie does, so.
Right, so I can mention it to Christie to discuss it again
Okay.
with the board.
Is it feasible to ask an applicant to agree to it contingent upon it being foreign?
I mean, the requirements in the law, they have to do it. It's just the mechanism.
Okay.
I don't know. There's
Town
not
board should
set up-
attend to it as soon as it can.
Yeah, so I'll mention to try to get that in front of the board again, because it is an issue that we keep hitting our heads against at this board.
I mean, we could make it an official resolution asking for them to do so, but I don't think that's necessary.
All right.
Well, actually, that may help in terms of a recommendation that you would agree to it, if as one of the options, right? Like moving forward with the town.
No,
board.
actually, the town board really has to attend to finishing what it set out in the statute.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, the fact is, you'd have to agree to it regardless. It's just that the town hasn't set up a mechanism,
Right.
and we need that.
Right.
Can they talk to someone in the Parks Department about a possible need somewhere? I mean, maybe there's some way to resolve this.
Sure, sure.
Maybe we
I
could do
think-
this administratively.
Yeah, I don't know that the town board has had the time to make an effort yet, so they just need to attend to it.
And if we were to reach out to the Parks Department, what would be the process for that? Would it be the town board?
Yeah, the town board should really determine how it wants to go about determining where the trees should be planted in town, and if people are going to submit money instead, how much per caliper they should submit.
Can we ask actually the parks as a temporary stopgap? Can we administratively ask the Parks Department just to designate certain trees?
It still has to be approved by the town board.
But they're probably going to ask the Parks Department for a recommendation on locations. So can we
I
at
don't-
least
We certainly could. I don't
reach out
think we
to them?
should do this on a sort of a piecemeal ad hoc basis.
Okay.
I think we should give the town board an opportunity to do it, but however you'd like to do it is fine.
Well, the point is that we keep on banging our heads on this, and so at one point or other, the town has to do it. Maybe the town board just says, for now, either set up a time period. So, Parks Department, just take care of it for now. We'll deal with it eventually. At least it will solve our problem here, and meanwhile, the trees will get planted, which I assume everybody wants.
Or we could tell the town board that we're going to need to implement this within 3 months. So, because we're going to be approving a project or two or three.
That makes sense.
Not to mention when we hit something like the Knowles project, which will take out a lot more trees.
Fortunately, at 593 North State Road, they were able to provide the trees on site.
Yeah. Yeah, that one's going to be
Right.
Yeah. All right, so please mention it to the town board again.
So with that, in moving the application forward, I guess, would that be a condition of approval as we go forward, or a condition of the subdivision approval?
It
or-
could be if you get that close to the finish line soon.
And depending if they're not ready yet, if it takes,
Right.
several months to-
Could be a condition, sure.
Okay,
Satisfying the town board.
right.
Right.
Okay. The other item, David, you mentioned about the steep slopes application. We had included a document in our set of plans that showed all the steep slopes and the areas and everything else. You mentioned an actual application. Is there a formal application?
I don't know that there is, but there are application materials specified in the chapter on steep slopes.
Right.
So if you could just submit a letter addressing those sections.
Okay, okay. That's the actual,
There's a map.
the map that shows and itemizes the areas.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think there's some justifications you need to attend to.
Okay, all right, so that will do that.
So in general, you just really just looking for approval just to subdivide this, but you're not building the houses, right?
The houses are not designed, the relative sizes are shown, so they are in sync with what was anticipated and what was built on that property already in terms of the quality and size. But obviously, an architect's gonna get involved and, be obviously a little different in shape and format.
Because I see a lot of retaining walls and stuff like that, so obviously like we talked with the first applicant this morning, early tonight.
They're going to need ARB approval before they can get a building permit to build those homes.
Okay.
We're not asking for that.
That's down the road.
Right. They'll have to come in for actual buildings that's been designed, so we'll do that. The other stuff, I think, in your memo, David, will obviously provide on the plans and resubmit those as well. So.
Okay, and you'll do the same thing for Dan's comments as well.
And Dan's comments as well. Yeah, we appreciate those.
All right, anything else we need to do on this? Any comments from?
We could accept lead agency status on this one too.
Okay. Any comments from the board on this?
No.
Okay, any motion to accept lead agency?
I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second.
Okay, no objections? Done, anything else we need to do?
And scheduling a public hearing, we want to do that for the next meeting, or?
Do you want to submit another
We've always
revised
submitted those,
plans
yeah.
first and then schedule the public hearing? What's your thoughts? Do you want to see another set of
How soon do you think you'll have the submission time?
When's the next meeting? October
3rd.
And then you have to have how many days beforehand?
Yeah, then you'll be noticing it if you don't have it done, it's sort of be like a waste of time.
We could probably do the October 3rd one, I would think.
The next one, that's October 17th, I think.
October 17th would be better, probably.
You could try to submit it for the board to look at October 3rd and not, and then look to notice the public hearing
You could have time for that.
17th if you want. I mean, if you would like to.
Because at least then you'll have the staff to be able to comment on it before.
No, I understand, yeah.
It's up to
Or,
you.
That would work. Yeah.
Okay, so, motion to have it for October 3rd, tentative anyway.
Have what?
Like continue this.
The public hearing or?
No, just
No.
this meeting. Continue
Just the
it.
meeting.
The meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
This is not a public hearing.
No, this is
No,
not.
it's not. I mean, often what
Although
happens.
if there's any members of the public, which I don't see here, so.
No, there's nobody here.
Often what happens is, the applicant submits something whenever they can get it submitted to the town, and then they get out the next available meeting, assuming it's more than 10 days hence. So, and either way is fine.
So we'll schedule the public hearing on October 3rd.
Yeah.
For the following
For
meeting.
the purpose
Assuming
of,
something comes in.
yeah,
Right.
just assuming that, we'll put on the agenda if it's available.
The 3rd or the 17th? That's what we wanted to say.
No, on the 3rd, we will
Schedule.
schedule for the
17th.
following.
Okay.
Assuming that's.
Assuming the plans are in and
So we're
just
this
adjourning
is on
to
the
the
agenda
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
that's all we're doing. Okay, anything else on this matter?
And
Get a notice.
we'll have to do that.
Yeah, but we'll provide a where, whatever.
Well, at the October 3rd meeting, they'll confirm that they want to do a public hearing, and then we'll have to.
You'll have to submit all your paperwork so that the staff can we're moving it forward.
Okay.
Okay.
Does it help to provide you with anything for the town board in terms of our application, in terms of trees or anything like that? Or should we wait for you to engage the board on deciding that?
If you actually could put together just briefly what you said tonight about
Why
the
we
issue-
need to do this?
Right,
Yeah.
why there needs to be some mechanism in place, because you're not gonna be able to do it fully on site, so we have to either
plant them offsite.
Plant them
or-
off-site or figure out how the tree fund is gonna work, and that's gonna be something that has to happen for this application. If maybe you could put that in writing to me, then I can use that forwarding to the town board to
Definitely,
say
yeah.
that this is something that definitely needs to be decided and addressed for this application.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Have folks had a chance to look at the minutes?
I can't respond to it because I wasn't there.
Well, good for you. I hope you had a good time. Any comments on? Motion to accept them? No questions, accepted, except for Mark, approving and stuff, I guess.
Correct.
Okay, and Dave, we already mentioned, the solar panels, right, that we'll have something from you at one point.
I'll send you a PDF, I'll send Sandy a PDF of what I, on those two Google Earth things.
Sure.
One was the one that was in York
I
Town,
think it's a summary though.
and the other one was, I tore the 90 stormy, whatever the road was.
Okay, good.
It was just interesting reading all the
You put on the record.
paperwork on it.
I have
No other matters?
Yeah.
Okay. Motion to adjourn, anyone?
Motion to adjourn.
Any
I'll
seconds?
second that.
Okay, no objections? Great, thank you.
Yeah, when you're looking at it from the side.